Everyone stared at me, as if I was the only one in the world who could solve all their problems. I personally didn't see what the matter was. She was just a helpless, homeless lady. The least they could all do was give her a little bit of sympathy. But I heard the moans and groans of all the customers, and my manager was standing over my shoulder whispering in my ear with threats. "If you don't get rid of that smelly hobo, I'm docking your pay this week." "But, sir, she just wants to use the ladies' room. The poor woman looks like she's been through enough." "Can't you see? The customers don't like her here. And who pays your salary?" You? My manager slapped me over the head. "The customers, you idiot! Now get over there and tell her she can't use the toilet and that she needs to leave, or I swear you won't see your paycheck this month." I thought it was unfair. I thought it was unfair that my boss was forcing me to do something I wasn't comfortable doing while holding my salary hostage. And it was unfair that those people who had the privilege to afford a $10 cup of coffee couldn't tolerate the sight of a suffering woman for even a couple of minutes. They weren't even trying to hide how disgusted they were with her. They covered their noses and shooed her away when she got close to their table. Some even hid their wallets and phones, as if she was gonna steal it from them. That really bothered me. So I took a muffin from the display, the jacket I came to work with, and made a steaming cup of hot chocolate to give to her. But my manager grabbed my arm, causing the drink to spill all over me. "Don't you dare! Don't you dare give her anything from my store, Andy!" "Just take it out of my pay. You love doing that anyway." So, to the horror of my manager and all those snobby folks who went to that cafe, I gave the woman my jacket and a muffin. "This way, ma'am. You can sit in this table. And you're welcome to our facilities." It was as if they saw someone commit the biggest atrocity there was. I simply hugged a homeless woman. By their reaction, it was as if I'd thrown a puppy in a tank full of sharks. My manager lost it. He dragged me by my collar and he did the same to the lady. He pushed and dragged us out of the cafe as he shouted for us to get out. "You're stinking up the whole place! And you're fired!" My name's Andy. I lost my job when I helped out a homeless woman. And this is the story of how I bankrupted the guy who fired me. Think you have a unique title for a story? Comment it down below and like the ones you think are interesting. You never know, your story may be the next one we post. Alright, now back to the story. I had to help her, even though doing it lost me my job. Still, I made sure she didn't wander off without having at least a hot meal. I took her to a diner, ordered her a huge meal and something else for her to take with her. She asked if I could drop her off at the park she slept at. Instead, I called one of my friends who volunteered at the shelter and got her a bed there. Before leaving her at the shelter, I gave her all the money I had. All $52 of it. And then I hugged her goodbye. I may not have much to give, but at least I had a roof over my head. And I wanted to make sure she would be able to get off the streets. I made sure my friend helped her out and introduced her to people who could give her a job. And then, I went on with my life. Never would have I guessed in all my life that small act of kindness would come back my way years later. I was still waiting tables at that point. Yeah, I know. But breaking into the theater scene is pretty hard, especially if you're a nobody with no connections, and you don't have the money or the right family name to get you by. So, anyway, I was waiting tables when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I knew that was you. I blinked twice in confusion. I'm sorry, ma'am. Do we know each other? I was pretty sure I'd never met someone like her. She was beautiful, almost like a model, and she had lavish jewelry on her. If I'd met anyone that rich, I'm pretty sure I'd remember. But the lady just laughed. "Ma'am, do I look that old? Just call me Irene. It's me. Don't you remember? You helped me all those years ago." Irene? Irene? Oh my gosh! As in, yeah, I was homeless when we met. And because of you, my life changed. I'm so glad we're seeing each other again. I've been looking for you for a year. Looking for me? Why? Well, I wanted to thank you, silly. I've been asking around for you, but even your friend at the shelter doesn't know where you live anymore. Oh, yeah. Well, I moved. Couldn't afford the rent there anymore. Well, then come live at mine. Oh, that's a very generous offer, but I don't think I can pose like that. Nonsense! If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have gotten off the streets. Ever since you helped me, everything in my life turned out for the better. I've gotten so lucky, and I owe that to you. This whole time I've thought about you. I promised myself I would pay you back for everything you did. And if you won't accept living for free at my house, then pay me rent. At the very least, you'll be living in a luxurious place. She wouldn't take no for an answer, and my manager was getting annoyed that I was neglecting my other tables. So I just said yes so she would stop begging. The next morning, Irene sent a limo to my house. I thought it was an empty offer, but it turned out she was determined to get me to move into her house. A truck came by filled with a bunch of men, and they didn't even ask me if I wanted to move my stuff. They just started boxing up my belongings and loading them into the truck. In less than an hour, I was standing at the door to my new home. And it was massive. Like the kind of houses you only see in magazines. Made sense, because Irene looked like the kind of woman you only see in magazines as well. She really did come far from where we last met. Apparently, thanks to the job she got, she learned a lot about the tech industry. And one day, she decided she'd try and become a programmer herself. And after a couple years, she became good enough to make her own apps. She built her own startup from her small apartment, and then the unthinkable happened. She was contacted by some huge company, and they decided to buy her piece of tech for $10 billion. I was very happy for her when she told me her story, especially since I know where she was before. Now I can do whatever I want, and what I want is to thank the man who rescued me. I didn't do much. You did enough. You're gonna have to stop thanking me at some point. Honestly, you said you'd charge me rent, but you never take my money. And every time you give it back to me, there's always more in my bank account. If you really want to pay rent, have dinner with me. It was awkward at first, but everything after that dinner was, as they say, history. Irene and I fell in love, and we got married. She even funded the musical I was writing, and now it's on Broadway. I never dreamed I would ever be able to work at Broadway, much less become the writer and producer of a hit show. It was after a party celebrating my show's win at the Tonys that we happened to drive past the street where Irene and I first met. We grew quiet. It was kinda strange being back there. But then something caught my eye. The cafe. It was still there. Now, I'm not the kind to hold a grudge, but I really hated working there. And because the owner and manager of that place fired me, I went through a lot of hardships and even lost my chance to pitch my musical to a producer because I couldn't afford the bus. Seemed such a long time ago. But when I saw that store, I felt a burning rage inside me. The very next week, I bought the plot of land next to it. I built the nicest, fanciest cafe and poured a lot of money into marketing it. I even asked my celebrity friends to frequent it. In no time at all, the cafe where I used to work at tanked. All their customers came to my cafe instead. I even poached all their employees and offered them twice their salary. And since my old manager could never compete with what we offered, and most days their cafe was empty, they closed down. I watched him close the doors and lock them for the last time, and I couldn't help myself. I just had to let him know. I wanted him to know it was me. So I took Irene and we caught up with him just before he could drive away. Hey boss, remember me? I don't know you, please go away. I'm not in the mood to talk to random people. Ha! I can imagine. Must be tough going bankrupt, huh? You can thank me for that. I actually own the new cafe next to yours. Remember when you fired me for helping a homeless woman? Well, I guess karma goes around, eh? Cause now I get to buy your cafe for cheap. Maybe I'll put a McDonald's in there. Oh, and that homeless woman? This is her now. My old manager's face was priceless. He could hardly believe his past would haunt him like that. The poor guy actually came to my cafe weeks later begging for a job. And you know me. I like keeping people out. Unfortunately for him, I only deserve those who deserve it.